In the heart of a forgotten Indian village, where the air carried whispers of despair and the streets were littered with neglect, stood an old, decrepit house. Its crumbling walls were streaked with moss, and its windows seemed to watch the world like dark, unblinking eyes. This house was not just a home, it was a prison of secrets, a tomb for the innocents that once dwelled there. Inside, two elderly figures moved about, Ramesh and Suman, their hunched forms blending into the shadows they had come to embody. Ramesh and Suman had not always been like this. Once they were proud parents, doting on their only son, Rajesh, who they believed would bring prosperity to their modest lives. Rajesh married Nalini, and together they left for the United States, lured by promises of opportunity. For a while there were letters, phone calls, and assurances of support. But over time, the calls grew infrequent, the letters ceased, and the promises dissolved into silence. Left behind, Ramesh and Suman spiraled into poverty, their once hopeful home now a shell of despair. As the years dragged on, desperation took hold. One evening, when a young woman named Anjali arrived seeking lodging, their dark transformation began. Anjali was vibrant and trusting, her laughter filling the empty corners of the house. She was exactly the kind of prey they needed. Suman offered her a room with practiced warmth, her voice betraying none of the malice brewing beneath the surface. That night, as Anjali slept, Suman slipped into her room with a glass of milk, laced with a powerful sedative. The next part of the ritual was Ramesh's task. He entered the room silently, an old cricket bat gripped tightly in his calloused hands. Suman followed, carrying a pillow. Together, they enacted their grim routine. The pillow muffled Anjali's weak struggles, while the bat delivered the final brutal blow. In the morning, Anjali's belongings were packed away, her jewelry, her money, even her clothes, and her lifeless body was discarded in the nearby forest. The couple's first kill was the hardest, but as the months turned to years, it became a chilling habit. The house became a trap for young women, each one lured by the promise of cheap rent and a friendly elderly couple. Ramesh and Suman became efficient in their methods, their actions devoid of hesitation or remorse. The stolen goods sustained them, a grotesque solution to their financial woes. The villagers suspected nothing, viewing the reclusive couple as harmless relics of a forgotten era. Far away in the bustling cities of the United States, Rajesh and Nalini thrived. Their daughter Priya grew up with stories of her grandparents, fond tales of summers spent chasing butterflies and savoring Suman's homemade sweets. Priya loved those stories, though she barely remembered her grandparents. As she grew older, she became determined to reconnect with them. When her parents' busy lives offered no time for a trip, Priya decided to visit them on her own. The plan was simple but heartfelt. She would surprise her grandparents. She packed a suitcase filled with thoughtful gifts, a woolen shawl for Suman, a hand-carved pipe for Ramesh, and a photo album documenting her life. She imagined their joy upon seeing her, the tears of happiness, and the warm embrace she longed for. The thought made her journey by train seem shorter, her heart swelling with anticipation as she approached the village. The evening of her arrival was cloaked in shadows. The village, with its dimly lit streets and murmuring winds, felt like a world apart. Priya's footsteps echoed as she approached the old house. Her knock on the door was answered by Suman, whose initial shock quickly gave way to a practiced smile. "Priya, my child, what a wonderful surprise!" Suman exclaimed, pulling her into a tight embrace. Ramesh appeared moments later, his face an unreadable mask. Priya's joy blinded her to the unease in their demeanor. Over dinner, Priya chatted animatedly, sharing stories and photos from her life. Suman and Ramesh played their roles well, their laughter and smiles masking the dark instincts that had been honed over years. But as Priya's voice softened with fatigue, Suman's hand trembled slightly as she prepared a glass of milk, just as she had so many times before. This time, however, doubt crept in. Could they truly do this to their own flesh and blood? The answer came in the form of habit. Suman added the sedative, her hands moving as if controlled by an unseen force. Priya drank the milk, unaware of the betrayal it carried. She hugged her grandparents one last time before retiring to bed, her heart full of love and gratitude. But as she drifted into sleep, Ramesh and Suman prepared for their grim task. The room was dimly lit when they entered. Suman's hands trembled as she placed the pillow over Priya's face, while Ramesh raised the bat with practiced precision. The act was over in moments, but as Ramesh turned to retrieve Priya's belongings, his eyes fell upon a locket that had slipped from her neck. He picked it up, the engraved name Priya catching the faint light. The realization struck him like a thunderclap. "Suman," he whispered, his voice shaking. Suman turned, her eyes widening as she saw the locket. The truth dawned on her with a horrifying clarity. Their granddaughter, the child they had once cradled in their arms, lay lifeless before them. The weight of their actions, so long suppressed, crashed down with unbearable force. The next morning, the phone rang, its sharp tone cutting through the heavy silence. Ramesh answered, his hands trembling. "Hello, Papa," came Rajesh's cheerful voice. "Priya was so excited to surprise you. Did she arrive safely?" The phone slipped from Ramesh's grasp, crashing to the floor. Suman let out a wail, the sound raw and guttural. They stared at Priya's lifeless body, her suitcase still packed with gifts. The guilt was suffocating, an inescapable torment that clawed at their very souls. For the first time in years, they wept, their tears unable to wash away the blood that stained their hands. Unable to bear the weight of their deeds, Ramesh and Suman made a final decision. They wrote a confession, detailing every crime they had committed. Their words were a desperate plea for understanding, a futile attempt to explain the horrors born of desperation. Sitting side by side in the room where Priya had died, they held hands one last time. A vial of poison lay between them, its contents offering an escape from the torment that consumed them. They drank together, their eyes fixed on Priya's photograph as their breaths grew shallow. The house fell silent once more, its secrets laid bare. Priya's photograph remained on the table, a haunting reminder of innocence lost and the devastating consequences of greed and despair.